The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with worried whispers. Tall beings with blue skin stood next to short, round creatures covered in fur. Some floated in anti-gravity chairs, while others sat on standard seats. Despite their differences, they all shared one thing: a look of confusion on their faces. At the center of the room, a hologram showed an old alien. Its skin was gray and wrinkled, with eyes that had seen thousands of years of space travel. This was lead observer Tom of the Watchers, and his message made the council members very uncomfortable. "You must listen carefully." Tom's voice was firm but scared. "Keep the humans out of the current war. Whatever you do, do not let them join either side. You don't understand what they're capable of." High Counselor Reed, an alien with golden scales, laughed. "The humans, they'd barely have space travel. They still use chemical rockets to reach their own moon. What threat could they pose?" The old Watcher's eyes narrowed. "Let me show you something." The hologram changed to show scenes from human history. This species went from basic flight to reaching their moon in just 66 years. Most races take 300 years to make this jump. The scenes kept changing. They showed humans fighting wars, but not in the way the council expected. There were no neat battle lines, no proper rules of engagement. The images showed humans fighting in deep snow, thick jungles, and empty deserts. They showed small groups defeating larger armies through clever tricks and new ideas. "But that's not proper warfare," said another council member, waving 3 of his 6 arms in disgust. "Where is the honor in such fighting?" Tom's face returned to the hologram. "They don't care about proper warfare. They care about winning. When humans fight, they change the rules. They look at everything as a possible weapon. Did you know they once won a battle by changing the direction of a river? They used the weather itself as a weapon." The council chamber grew quieter. The Watchers were known for being careful and afraid of everything. But they were also always right about dangers. "There's more," Tom continued. "Humans have something we've never seen before. They call it adaptable creativity. When they face a new problem, they don't look for the proper solution. They try everything until something works. And once they find what works, they make it better." The hologram showed more scenes. Humans taking apart machines and putting them back together in new ways. Humans fixing complex devices with simple materials. Humans turning peaceful tools into weapons. In their most recent conflicts, Tom explained, they've started using something they call asymmetric warfare. They don't try to match their enemy's strength. Instead, they find weak points and strike there. They attack supply lines instead of armies. They confuse instead of confront. And they never, ever give up. High Counselor Reed stood up. "But they're so primitive. Their ships can barely reach their system's edge." "That's exactly why they're dangerous," Tom said. "They're used to working with limited tools. Imagine what they'll do with advanced technology. They won't use it the way it's meant to be used. They'll take it apart, improve it, combine it with other things in ways we'd never think of." The hologram changed one last time, showing Earth from space. It looked peaceful, blue and green and white. Right now, they're contained to their solar system. They're developing slowly, carefully. But if you drag them into this war, if you force them to develop quickly, Tom's voice trailed off. "You're overreacting," Reed said, but his voice wasn't as confident anymore. "We'll simply avoid their system. Problem solved." Tom shook his head sadly. "The Dominion won't avoid them. They'll try to use Earth's position to their advantage. When that happens, remember my warning. Keep the humans out of this war, or you'll learn why every species that's ever fought them has regretted it." The hologram disappeared, leaving the council in uncomfortable silence. They'd received many warnings from the Watchers before, but never one delivered with such fear. High Counselor Reed looked around the room, then made a decision that would soon prove to be a terrible mistake. "Note the warning in our records," he said, "but take no action. They're just primitives after all. What's the worst that could happen?" The diplomatic ship landed exactly where it was supposed to, in a clearing near the United Earth Government building in Geneva. It was bigger than Earth's largest passenger plane, but made almost no sound as it touched down. Armed guards stood nearby, trying to look calm even though their hands shook with excitement. Ambassador Mark stood at the front of the welcoming committee, straightening his tie for the 10th time. Humanity had waited centuries for this moment. Their first official contact with alien life. Everything had to be perfect. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss, revealing 3 beings. The first was tall and thin with golden scales. High Counselor Reed himself had come to greet Earth. Behind him stood 2 blue-skinned aliens who carried what looked like tablets. "Welcome to Earth," Mark said, speaking slowly and clearly. "We are honored by your presence." Reed smiled, showing teeth that looked almost human. "The honor is ours. Your species has progressed remarkably fast. We've been watching your development with great interest." The meeting moved inside, where Earth's leaders had gathered. Everything went smoothly at first. They talked about trade, cultural exchange, and the basics of galactic politics. Then one of the blue-skinned aliens made a mistake that would change everything. "Of course," he said, looking at his tablet, "Earth's position could be very helpful in the current war effort." The room went silent. Reed's scales changed color slightly, showing his anger. The alien realized his mistake too late. "War effort?" Mark asked, his voice careful. "What war effort?" Reed tried to save the situation. "Just a small disagreement between systems. Nothing that concerns Earth at this stage." But Mark wasn't going to let it go. "With all respect, High Counselor, any war that might affect our solar system concerns us very much. Please explain." The other leaders nodded. Reed looked around the room and saw he had no choice. He would have to tell them the truth. "The galaxy is currently divided," he said slowly. "The Alliance and the Dominion have been fighting for control of several key trade routes, but the conflict is far from here. Your system is safe." "How many systems are involved?" asked General Pat, who had been quiet until now. "Around 300, Reed admitted. The Earth leaders looked at each other. 300 systems at war, and no one had thought to warn them. "What containment strategies are in place?" Mark asked. "How do you prevent the war from spreading to neutral systems?" Reed blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected such specific questions. We have patrol ships that monitor the borders of the conflict zone." "Just patrol ships?" General Pat frowned. "No buffer zones? No early warning systems? No emergency evacuation plans for civilian populations?" The blue-skinned aliens were typing furiously on their tablets, probably wondering how these primitives knew about such concepts. "We find our current methods sufficient," Reed said stiffly. Mark leaned forward. "High Counselor, with respect, history shows that conflicts of this size rarely stay contained without proper safety measures. We would like to offer Earth's help in developing better containment strategies." "That won't be necessary," Reed said quickly, remembering the Watcher's warning. "As I said, the situation is under control." But he could see in their eyes that the humans didn't believe him. They asked more questions about refugee movements, resource competition, and economic impacts. Each question made Reed more uncomfortable. These weren't the simple primitives he'd expected to meet. As the meeting ended, Mark walked Reed back to his ship. "We hope you'll reconsider our offer to help with peacekeeping measures," he said. Reed forced a smile. "Focus on developing your own world, Ambassador. Leave galactic matters to those with more experience." As the ship took off, Mark turned to General Pat. "They're hiding something." Pat nodded. "And their containment strategies are a joke. We need to prepare. If they won't keep the war away from Earth, we'll have to do it ourselves." In orbit, Reed sent an urgent message to the Council. "The humans know about the war. And they're asking all the wrong questions, or maybe all the right ones." 3 months after first contact, Earth's long-range sensors detected something new. 5 ships, much larger than the diplomatic vessel that had visited before, were approaching the solar system. They weren't trying to hide. "They're Dominion ships," Ambassador Mark said, Looking at the images, the Council had at least shared information about different ship designs after their last meeting. But they're claiming to be on a diplomatic mission. General Pat stood by the window of the emergency command center, watching the sky. Diplomatic missions don't need warships. The largest ship sent a message. People of Earth, we come representing the Dominion of Free Systems. We wish to discuss your future role in galactic affairs. The Earth leaders gathered quickly. They knew this was coming. The Watchers had secretly contacted them 2 weeks ago, warning that the Dominion was planning something. Earth had used that time well. The Dominion ships landed in the same clearing as the Council ship had. But this time, things were different. Hidden defense systems tracked their every move. Underground bunkers were ready. And in secret facilities around the world, engineers were working day and night. Commander Will of the Dominion stepped out first. He looked almost human, except for his red skin and 4 arms. "We bring greetings," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The meeting room was the same, but the mood was very different. Commander Will didn't waste time with small talk. "Earth sits at a crucial position," he said, spreading a holographic map on the table. "Your system controls access to 3 major trade routes. The Council has been unfair in keeping you isolated." "We're not isolated," Mark said calmly. "We're developing at our own pace." Will laughed. "The Council is holding you back. Join the Dominion, and we'll share all our technology with you. Your people could travel the stars tomorrow." "And what would you want in return?" General Pat asked. "Just permission to move ships through your system," Will said smoothly. "And maybe build a few small bases. For protection, of course." Mark and Pat shared a look. They'd seen this before in Earth's history. Small nations caught between larger powers, forced to choose sides. "We need time to consider your offer," Mark said diplomatically. Will's smile disappeared. "Time is something we don't have. The Council is weak. They can't protect you. We can. But we need your answer now." "Or what?" Pat asked quietly. Will stood up, all 4 arms spread wide. "Or we might have to take more direct action. For your own protection, of course." The room went silent. In that moment, Earth's leaders knew they had a choice to make: accept Dominion control or face the consequences. Mark stood slowly. "Commander Will, let me be very clear. Earth will not be pressured into taking sides in your war. We ask you to leave our system immediately." Will's red skin turned darker. "You don't understand your situation. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are jokes. You have no defenses that could stop us." "Maybe," Pat said, pressing a button under the table. Hidden screens came to life, showing hundreds of defense satellites that hadn't been there yesterday. "But are you sure about that?" Will's eyes widened. "Impossible. You couldn't have built those so fast." "Leave our system," Mark repeated. "This is your only warning." Will stormed out, boarding his ship quickly. As the Dominion fleet left orbit, they sent one last message. "You've made a terrible mistake. We'll be back." In the command center, Pat turned to Mark. "That went about as well as we expected." Mark nodded. "How long until the new defense systems are actually working?" 3 weeks, Pat said. "Let's hope they give us that long." "They won't," Mark replied. "Contact our friends in the Alliance. Tell them it's time for Plan B." High above Earth, hidden sensors watched the Dominion ships leave. Humanity had been preparing for war since the moment they learned about the conflict. Now they would show the galaxy why the Watchers had warned everyone to keep them out of it. The Galactic Council's emergency meeting was interrupted by urgent news. A Dominion warship had been disabled near the Sol system. Not destroyed. Disabled. Every system on the ship had simply stopped working at once. "Impossible," High Counselor Reed said, his scales turning pale. "Their shields should have prevented any weapon from—" "It wasn't a weapon," his aide interrupted. "At least, not one we recognize. The humans. They did something different. On Earth, in a hidden facility deep under the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Jane showed General Pat their latest creation. It looked like a small satellite, hardly bigger than Earth's old communication devices. "We call it the Handyman," she said, patting the device. "Remember how the Dominion ships used that fancy quantum field for their shields? We found a way to turn it into a problem." Pat looked confused. "How?" "You know how your garage door opener sometimes interferes with your Wi-Fi." Jane grinned. "Same basic principle, just scaled up about 1,000,000 times. Their quantum field is amazing technology, but it's still a field, and fields can be disrupted." The humans had spent the last month taking apart the small pieces of alien technology they'd managed to collect. But instead of trying to copy it exactly, they looked for ways to make it work with what they already had. In another facility, this one underwater near Hawaii, Engineer Mike was explaining their latest breakthrough to Ambassador Mark. Their ships use quantum entanglement for instant communication, Mike said, pointing to a modified cell phone tower. "Very advanced, but quantum states are fragile. We found out we can jam their signals using modified radio towers. Not exactly elegant, but it works." Mark smiled. They'd probably never thought anyone would try something so primitive. "Exactly," Mike said excitedly. "They've been using quantum tech so long, they forgot about older methods. It's like someone with a high-tech security system, never thinking to check if their window is open." The real breakthrough came from an unexpected place. A group of video game developers had been brought in to look at alien shield technology. They noticed something familiar. "It's basically the same math we use for collision detection in games," one developer explained to the military brass. "Just way more complex. But if we treat their shields like a game environment." They modified gaming engines to predict shield behavior. Within days, they could calculate exactly where and when shields would be weakest. The Dominion never saw it coming. But humanity's biggest advantage wasn't their technology, it was their way of thinking. When the Dominion and Alliance fought, they used proper military ships and weapons. Humans used everything. They turned old satellites into mines. They modified weather satellites to track quantum disturbances. They even found a way to use their planet's magnetic field to hide ships. "It's not about having the best technology," Dr. Jane explained to a visiting Alliance representative. "It's about using what you have in ways no one expects." The Alliance rep watched as another demonstration disabled a test ship. "But this isn't proper warfare." "There's no such thing as proper warfare," General Pat said firmly. "There's just warfare. And the goal is to win while losing as few lives as possible." In orbit, Earth's new defense fleet was growing. The ships looked strange to alien eyes, a mix of old and new technology. Some still had visible welding marks where Earth tech had been combined with alien systems. "They're ugly," an Alliance observer commented. "They're effective," Pat corrected. "And they're just the beginning." The Council received another message from the Watchers. "We warned you. They're not good at war because they have the best weapons. They're good at war because they ignore all the rules about how weapons are supposed to work." Reed looked out at the stars, wondering what other surprises the humans had planned. They had tried to keep humanity out of the war to protect the galaxy. Now he wondered if they should have tried to protect the galaxy from humanity instead. Ambassador Mark stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. Behind him, displayed on the giant screen, was a map showing the spread of the war. Red dots marked battle sites, and there were far too many of them. "We've asked for peace talks 6 times, Mark said, his voice tired but firm. "We've offered to host negotiations 4 times. We've even suggested creating neutral trade zones to reduce tensions. Each time, both sides have refused." High Counselor Reed shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The human wasn't supposed to be here, but they have found a way to enter Council space without being detected. Another example of their strange innovation. "This is not your concern," the Dominion representative growled. "You're not even a proper spacefaring race." Mark smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Tell that to your disabled ships. The ones we shut down without firing a single shot. The room went quiet. Everyone had heard about those ships. Some said the humans had used magic. Others claimed they had secret technology. Nobody had guessed they had simply found a way to turn the ship's own systems against them. "We're making one final offer," Mark continued. "Stop this war. Return to your borders. Let's talk about peace." The Alliance representative laughed. "Or what? You'll send more of your primitive ships to bother us." General Pat stepped forward, standing beside Mark. "No, we'll be forced to stop you ourselves." The council chamber erupted in laughter. Even Reed couldn't help chuckling. These humans had some clever tricks, but surely they couldn't think they could take on two galactic powers at once. "Don't make us do this," Mark pleaded. "Humanity doesn't want to join your war. But if you keep pushing, if you keep threatening peace in our part of space, we will end this conflict. You won't like how we do it." In the back of the chamber, a Watcher representative quietly began sending messages. They knew what was coming. They had seen it before, in humanity's history. When humans said they would end a conflict, they meant it. "You have 24 hours to begin peace talks," Pat said firmly. "After that, we'll consider both your forces a threat to galactic stability." "This is ridiculous," the Dominion representative snarled. "You can't threaten us. We have fleets across thousands of systems." "Yes," Mark said sadly. "Very impressive fleets, all needing fuel, supplies, and quantum communications to function. All following proper military doctrine. All playing by the same rules of war." He paused. "We don't play by those rules." As Mark and Pat left the chamber, they heard the council breaking into angry argument. Some wanted to crush Earth immediately. Others remembered the disabled ships and urged caution. Back on their ship, Pat turned to Mark. "They're not going to agree to peace talks, are they?" "No," Mark sighed. "They think we're bluffing. They think we're too weak, too primitive to actually stop them." "Should we tell them about the mining ships?" "No." Mark looked out at the stars. "Let them find out the hard way that we've been converting our mining fleet into something else, something they won't expect." In the council chamber, the Watcher representative finally spoke up. "You laugh at them because their ships are ugly, because they use primitive technology alongside advanced systems, because they don't fight the way you think they should fight." The chamber went quiet again. "That's exactly why they're dangerous," the Watcher continued. "They don't care how things are supposed to work. They care about what works. And now you've made them think that war is necessary." Reed felt his scales changing color with worry. Perhaps they should have listened to the humans' offers of peace. But it was too late now. The 24 hours had begun. The 24 hours passed. Neither the Alliance nor the Dominion agreed to peace talks. They expected a dramatic human attack, perhaps a desperate charge toward their main fleets or an attempt to strike their capitals. Instead, nothing happened. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then everything started going wrong. "What do you mean we've lost contact with the fuel depot in Sector 7? The Dominion commander demanded, his red face getting even redder. "It's just gone," his officer replied. "The whole station. The supply ships too. No debris, no distress signal. Just gone." Across the galaxy, in Alliance space, similar reports were coming in. Supply stations vanishing, cargo ships disappearing, quantum communication relays going silent. In a hidden command center on Earth, General Pat watched the reports come in. "The mining ships are working better than expected," he said. Dr. Jane nodded. "Turns out those old asteroid mining rigs make perfect stealth ships. No one expects a cargo scanner to be hiding a quantum disruptor." The humans hadn't attacked the enemy fleets. They had started with something much simpler: logistics. Those ugly ships that everyone had laughed at. They were designed to look like normal mining and cargo vessels. Ships that both sides were used to seeing everywhere. Ships that no one paid attention to. Each one carried a mix of Earth's primitive technology and modified alien systems. They could shut down quantum shields, jam communications, and even teleport entire stations into pocket dimensions, a trick they'd learned from studying alien cargo holds. "Sir," an aide rushed in. "The Alliance just lost 3 more supply lines. The Dominion's trying to push into Sector 12, but their ships are running out of fuel." Pat smiled. "How are our Special Forces teams doing?" "Operation Space Monkey is going perfectly," Mark said, walking into the room. "Those small fighter ships we built, the ones they thought were too weak to matter, they're perfect for hiding in asteroid fields." The humans had studied guerrilla warfare for centuries. Now they were applying those lessons to space. Small, fast ships would jump out of hiding, cause chaos, and disappear again. The enemy couldn't fight what they couldn't catch. But the real genius was in the targeting. Humans didn't go after military ships. They went after fuel stations, supply lines, communication relays, repair yards, all the boring, unglamorous things that armies needed to function. "The Dominion lost another quantum communications hub," the aide reported. "Their ships can't coordinate without using old radio signals. Radio signals that we can intercept and jam," Jane added. "They've forgotten how to fight without instant communication." In Council space, Reed watched the reports with growing horror. The humans weren't fighting a proper war. They were taking apart the enemy's ability to fight, piece by piece. "This is their response to our refusal of peace talks?" the Alliance representative asked, his voice shaking. "No," the Watcher said quietly. "This is them being merciful. They're giving you a chance to surrender without massive loss of life." A week into what was becoming known as the Silent War, both the Alliance and Dominion were in chaos. Their mighty fleets were stuck in space, low on fuel and supplies. Their advanced communications were useless. Their supply lines were in shambles. And still, they hadn't seen a single human warship. "Maybe we should have listened to their peace offer," Reed said, watching another supply station disappear from the map. The Watcher nodded. "The humans tried to warn you. They didn't want to join your war. So instead, they decided to end it." "By breaking all the rules of warfare," Reed complained. "No," the Watcher corrected. "By showing you that your rules of warfare were just imaginary limits you put on yourselves." Ambassador Mark stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. Behind him, displayed on the giant screen, was a map showing the spread of the war. Red dots marked battle sites, and there were far too many of them. "We've asked for peace talks 6 times, Mark said, his voice tired but firm. "We've offered to host negotiations 4 times. We've even suggested creating neutral trade zones to reduce tensions. Each time, both sides have refused." High Counselor Reed shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The human wasn't supposed to be here, but they had found a way to enter Council space without being detected. Another example of their strange innovation. "This is not your concern," the Dominion representative growled. "You're not even a proper spacefaring race." Mark smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Tell that to your disabled ships, the ones we shut down without firing a single shot." The room went quiet. Everyone had heard about those ships. Some said the humans had used magic. Others claimed they had secret technology. Nobody had guessed they had simply found a way to turn the ship's own systems against them. "We're making one final offer," Mark continued. "Stop this war. Return to your borders. Let's talk about peace." The Alliance representative laughed. "Or what? You'll send more of your primitive ships to bother us." General Pat stepped forward, standing beside Mark. "No, we'll be forced to stop you ourselves." The council chamber erupted in laughter. Even Reed couldn't help chuckling. These humans had some clever tricks, but surely they couldn't think they could take on 2 galactic powers at once. "Don't make us do this," Mark pleaded. "Humanity doesn't want to join your war. But if you keep pushing, if you keep threatening peace in our part of space, we will end this conflict. You won't like how we do it." In the back of the chamber, a Watcher representative quietly began sending messages. They knew what was coming. They had seen it before, in humanity's history. When humans said they would end a conflict, they meant it. "You have 24 hours to begin peace talks," Pat said firmly. "After that, we'll consider both your forces a threat to galactic stability." "This is ridiculous," the Dominion representative snarled. "You can't threaten us. We have fleets across thousands of systems." "Yes," Mark said sadly. "Very impressive fleets, all needing fuel, supplies, and quantum communications to function. All following proper military doctrine. All playing by the same rules of war." He paused. "We don't play by those rules." As Mark and Pat left the chamber, they heard the council breaking into angry argument. Some wanted to crush Earth immediately. Others remembered the disabled ships and urged caution. Back on their ship, Pat turned to Mark. "They're not going to agree to peace talks, are they?" "No," Mark sighed. "They think we're bluffing. They think we're too weak, too primitive to actually stop them." "Should we tell them about the mining ships?" "No." Mark looked out at the stars. "Let them find out the hard way that we've been converting our mining fleet into something else. Something they won't expect." In the council chamber, the Watcher representative finally spoke up. "You laugh at them because their ships are ugly. Because they use primitive technology alongside advanced systems. Because they don't fight the way you think they should fight." The chamber went quiet again. "That's exactly why they're dangerous," the Watcher continued. "They don't care how things are supposed to work. They care about what works. And now you've made them think that war is necessary." Reed felt his scales changing color with worry. Perhaps they should have listened to the humans' offers of peace. But it was too late now. The 24 hours had begun.